Good afternoon, guys. It's working, bringing you a quick update on Bitcoin. Hope you guys are having a wonderful afternoon. We're looking at Bitcoin to the US dollar. This is the one-day chart on Coinbase. And guys, things are really getting interesting. Looking at Bitcoin here, it's still operating within what looks like an ascending wedge here, or excuse me, an ascending triangle, which is an overall bullish sign. If this ends up coming to fruition, as I told you last time, guys, I was going to be looking for resistance right at the top of this zone at about 53.50. That's exactly where we're finding resistance now. And I told you last time I may consider shorting Bitcoin if it bounced off this area. I'm no longer considering doing that. The reason is, guys, well, a few reasons. Let's just go over them all. Looking at this, looking at longs versus shorts to start off with, guys, we can see shorts are. There we go. Shorts are starting to stack rather significantly. If we come over here, guys, just in the last, well, really in the last 24 hours, we can see they are up about 28%, which is very significant. If we come over here and we look at longs, longs have actually dropped fairly substantially. So this is we are setting up for, in my opinion, we are setting up for a possible short squeeze to push price up. Now, while that is bullish in the short term, and while that may validate what looks like an ascending triangle here, overall, if that's all that's pushing Bitcoin up, if it's just a short squeeze, typically as fast as it goes up, it often comes back down. And we are seeing some signs in the market, guys, that does suggest a major correction is coming. Even though overall I am bullish on Bitcoin, overall I do think this is the beginning, or at least a preview to the beginning of an overall bull run that is coming. That being said, I do think we have a little bit more pain here to go through. We have a nice rounding bottom. As I said, it's a very, very bullish sign. We have this ascending support line here on price, series of higher lows, extremely bullish. We have, of course, our ascending wedge here, very small one, which suggests a breakup, even though not a substantial one given its small size. And we do have this very relevant, in my opinion, resistance area here. This was support. It's obviously acting as resistance now, and of course, as I pointed out numerous times, that's also, if I go swing high, swing low here, that is the golden pocket, that area between the 618 and the 65 fib level right here, that is always so important to get above. If that can start acting as support, guys, not a break above, but if that breaks above and then comes back down and acts as support, that'd be an extremely, extremely bullish sign. I don't know that it's going to do that, guys. In my opinion, I think the most logical scenario would be a break up. We're going to find resistance possibly as high as 5,800. So while we might break up above that golden pocket, I do think we're going to quickly find resistance at this $5,800 to $6,000 range, and we're going to get a very strong rejection. The question is, how far will price come down? Will it find resistance on this ascending support line, or will it find resistance on one of these areas of known resistance, or should be known resistance? They were support areas of what should be known support, because in the past they've acted as strong resistance. So the first starting at 4,500, and of course, as I've discussed in the past, all the way down between 4,400 to 4250, and then the next zone, and the most relevant one, being between 4,120 and 4,000. If 4,000 breaks down, I think we're going to come back down and retest this prior low. Now, does that has to happen? Absolutely. Does that have to happen? Absolutely not. But I'm going to show you why I think that is a very logical scenario. All right, the temporary breakup, that's looking fairly obvious. We have the short stacking here, and of course, oftentimes we get a short squeeze off that. So that breakup in price, that's looking more probable as we go on here. But what I want to talk about more than that, and more importantly, I believe what is more important, is what looks like a coming golden cross. What looks like this 50-day moving average is about to cross above this 200-day moving average. If that does happen, guys, for all you traders out there, that you know this, but for those of you that aren't traders, a golden cross. In other words, anytime on the daily chart you see the 50-day moving average crossing above the 200-day moving average, that's called a golden cross, and that's one of the strongest signs of the beginning of a bull market. Now, I have seen a lot of people talking about various things, saying they pointed out gold, and they pointed out that gold many times had a golden cross in the past, and it didn't turn into a bull market. And while that's true, that golden cross happened on the gold sector. That happened. It was basically hovering around where we had the 50-day moving average and the 200-day moving average basically crisscrossing over a series of months. That's not what we have here. What we have here is we have a 50-day moving average that has been well below the 200-day moving average all the way since March, for over a year now. So you have to you can't just look at the moving averages and say as long as they're crossing above, that's a bullish sign. You have to look at it all in context. And in this context, guys, that is in my opinion, I call it a pure golden cross. In other words, we've had a bear market coming off of a death cross. In other words, the 50-day crossing below the 200-day moving average, and that ushered in that bear market that obviously we've all been in. And we didn't have it cross back above at any point in time throughout that bear market. And now, a year later, we are having what looks like a possible scenario where we do have that cross above. So that's going to be a pure golden cross, in my opinion, what I call a pure golden cross. So I do think that could usher in, of course, nothing is a guarantee, but I do think that could usher in overall that bull market that we're all waiting for. That being said, guys, many times in the past when we've had this initial either the death cross or the golden cross, even though it ushered in a bull market or a bear market or a bull market respectively, we still had a correction, a large correction the other way before that bear or bull market began. And I'll just take this for example. This last time we had the death cross. We had the 50-day crossing below the 200-day moving average here on March 28th of 2018. And of course, when that happened, price was sitting right down here. And what happened within the week or two to follow? We actually did price end up crashing down? Not at all. We actually had price coming up all the way, about 54% rise in price before it just crashed right back down. And of course, everybody back here was making fun of that death cross, saying that meant nothing. Clearly, we're back in the bull market, and of course, we weren't. We came back down to what now we know was all-time lows for 2018, and had another year of the assuming that we are now transitioning to a bull market, we had another year of a bear market from that cross. So just because we're having that cross there, guys, doesn't mean that price is now going to all-time highs. We could very well have a bounce in the opposite direction. Here we had a bounce to the upside here, and looking back here, we could absolutely, even though we have what looks like the probability the 50-day is going to cross above that 200-day, we're going to get that golden cross, doesn't mean we can't have a major correction to the downside before we start that bull market. And I do think that's going to happen. If we come back here, just probability, guys. Of course, nothing, as I said, nothing is a guarantee. But looking at this weekly chart, we're extremely extended here on the weekly chart. Not only are we extended on the weekly chart, sorry guys, had to pause the video there real quick. Not only are we extended there on the weekly chart, if we bring up our MACD, this is again on the weekly, and we go point to point, and I've pointed this out before, but it's still, I believe, very relevant. We go point to point, clearly we've created a lower high on price there. And if we look at this is an obvious downtrend. If we look at the overall trend here, there's no question this was an overall downtrend. We have yet to break back above to where we can call this a overall on the weekly chart, an overall uptrend just yet, if again, looking at the bigger picture here. So with that in mind, if we come over here and we look at the histogram down here, point to point, what do we have? We have a higher high. So a lower high on price, we have a higher high, this being an overall downtrend. And looking at the upside, that's obviously hidden divergence. In this case, that's hidden bearish divergence, and that would suggest a decent breakdown in price. Now, again, does that mean that all of this was for naught? No. I do think we're going to have a major correction, but I also think that all of this is going to equate to the start of the preview of the overall bull market to come. But I do think we're going to have some more downside, even though temporarily we're going to have a little breakup. I do think overall in the next few weeks, possibly, we're going to have some more, few weeks to possibly 2 months, some more downside to go. And just in case you can dismiss this as an anomaly, or you want to dismiss this as an anomaly, it's really not. If we come back here and we look at the weekly chart for 2018, or excuse me, the weekly MACD all throughout 2018, we can see that it predicted a lot of these major breakdowns. In other words, let's go right here. Let's go point to point. Obviously, a lower high was created there. If we go point to point, exact same point on the histogram, higher high, that was again hidden bearish divergence, and we had that breakdown here. And I can do this 3 more times. We had it here, we had it here, we had it here, and you can see it as it was just continuing down here. The histogram was just continuing up here, and we kept getting slapped down every single time. So this has predicted a major drop every time, so it would be foolish to ignore this. Now, it doesn't mean it, again, it doesn't mean it has to happen, guys. This is Bitcoin. So obviously, if FOMO takes over and we break up above 6,000, I do think that it's going to be off to the races. But I don't see, in probability-wise, I don't see that happening. I think the most likely scenario is something like this, possibly a little bit more down, possibly a little bit more of a breakdown here in the short term, maybe even coming down as low as the bottom of this ascending support line of this, let me blow this up so you guys can see a little bit better, of this ascending triangle. And then I think we are going to break up here. I think it's going to trap people. It's going to liquidate a lot of those short positions. It's going to, I think longs are going to start to stack. Everyone's going to think this is the breakout. And then I think we're going to come back down and at least test this ascending support line. If not, this first line of support down here at, oh, that's not what I wanted, down here at 4,500, really 4,540 if I want to be precise, all the way down to possibly 4,400 down to 4,250, and even this $4,000 to $4,100 range down here. And as I said before, guys, nothing has changed. I've got buy orders laddered in between 4,500 all the way down to 4,100, actually all the way down to 4,000. I'm expecting a nice bounce off that area. Now, if we do break 4,000, yes, a possibility that we're going to come back down and retest these prior lows here. But in my opinion, I think that'd be as low as it go. I'd be very surprised if we created a new low on this chart here for 2018, or really even since December of 2018. I don't think we're going to take out this prior low, which sits at about 3150. I don't even think we're going to test it, but I do think if we do break 4,000, then that is on the table, but I don't see it going any lower than that in my opinion. One other reason, guys, and a fairly significant reason, that I do think that we do have one more correction coming, even though, again, here in the short term, I do think this thing is going to break up. I do think it's going to break back down fairly substantially, at least back down to about 5,000. But I would say that, at least 5,000, but again, possibly more likely 4,000, 4,500. The other reason is, guys, as this, and a lot of people are talking, or excuse me, a lot of people are ignoring this, even though I hear a few people talking about it, but the network value to transactions ratio, that's basically just the overall value of Bitcoin. In other words, the overall market of Bitcoin divided by the daily USD volume that goes through, that transacts through the actual Bitcoin blockchain. That's basically just that ratio. Every time we've seen it come up into the red here, we've had a major sell-off, and this goes all the way back into 2017. Let me bring it up here. This goes all the way back to 2017. We've had it come up here into the red. This was back in December, and of course, we all know how that turned out. We peaked out in December, and then of course, we started that massive sorry guys, that massive bear market that of course we've been in. And of course, this also predicted it all the way back here in July of 2018. We started getting this into the red, the NVT into the red here. And every time it hit red, we broke down until eventually it was just flatlining here in red. And of course, that was forecasting the major breakdown to to almost $3,000 that we saw back in December. So we're getting that again. We're starting to get that NVT shade of red now, guys, and this again would suggest a decent breakdown to come. Now, does it have to happen? Absolutely not. It just seems one more piece of information, one more piece of the puzzle that would suggest that we do have a pretty substantial breakdown. By substantial, I would say 20-25% from wherever we end up topping out here in the short term. I do think we're going to drop about 20-25%, and again, this is just another piece of information that would suggest that's also to come. And just logic would tell you guys, things just usually don't go up forever. We haven't had a major correction since we started coming up here back in February, since we've got that major increase in volume. I mean, Bitcoin has just been incredibly bullish. We've seen a lot of the altcoins incredibly bullish, and you just expect, just logically, that we're going to have a decent pullback before we have that major that major bull market that everyone is hoping for. So again, guys, for all these reasons, I don't want to burst anyone's bubble. I just want you to be very cautious, and I don't want you to get wrecked. And when you see price break down, if and when that does happen, and again, I could be completely wrong on this, and truly, I hope I am. I'm a bull at heart, guys. I will short the market, but I prefer, I know how many people get wrecked on those. I prefer, guys, this thing to just go up and we all make our money. But in the short term, guys, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you that we do have a very high probability that price, even though in the short term price is going to break up, I do think it's going to come back down here to at least 5,000, possibly 4,500, and possibly even as low as 4,000. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap things there, guys. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, please let me know in the comment section below. As always, would appreciate an upvote if you have enjoyed this content. Until next time, guys, please trade safe, take care of yourselves. This is Working, signing out.